The desert sun burned high as the masked cartel enforcers stood before her, their rifles glinting under the heat. A suitcase overflowing with cash lay open in her hands, more than most people would make in a lifetime. "Take it. Walk away," one of them said, but she just smirked. If you love stories about fearless truckers who don't back down, then you're in the right place. Hit subscribe now and join the ride, because some roads lead to unexpected payback. The sun hung low over the Mexican desert, casting long shadows across the endless stretch of asphalt. The heat shimmered off the road in waves, making the horizon blur like a mirage. A lone 18-wheeler rumbled through the desolate landscape, its powerful engine growling against the silence of the open road. Behind the wheel sat Isabella "Izzy" Morales, a veteran trucker with a reputation that preceded her. She was known for her unwavering integrity, one of the last honest drivers in a world where corruption had seeped into every crevice of the industry. Izzy wasn't just another trucker. She had served in the U.S. Marines before taking to the highways, and those who knew her understood that she wasn't one to be messed with. Her deep brown eyes remained fixed on the road ahead, but her mind was working through a problem that had been tailing her for the past 20 miles. The convoy of 3 black SUVs had been creeping behind her ever since she crossed into cartel territory. She had seen this before. She wasn't stupid. Trucks that entered these roads either paid for protection or disappeared without a trace. The cartel didn't like independent operators, especially ones who didn't play by their rules. She kept her hands steady on the wheel, her fingers lightly grazing the revolver strapped beneath her seat. If they thought she would be an easy target, they were about to learn the truth the hard way. Up ahead, a roadside diner came into view, its neon lights flickering in the growing dusk. Izzy made her decision. She turned into the gravel parking lot, letting her truck hiss to a stop just beside an old fuel pump. She shut off the engine and stepped out, her boots crunching against the dry earth. As if on cue, the 3 SUVs skidded to a stop, kicking up a cloud of dust. The doors swung open, and 6 men dressed in tactical gear stepped out. Their faces were obscured by black ski masks, and each carried an assault rifle slung across their chest. Izzy sighed, rolling her shoulders. She had seen this routine before. One of the men, a tall figure with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward. His voice was smooth, but carried an unmistakable edge of menace. "Senora, we know what you're carrying," he said, nodding toward the back of her truck, "and we are willing to make you an offer." Izzy arched an eyebrow but said nothing. The man clapped his hands, and one of the other cartel members walked forward, carrying a briefcase filled to the brim with cash. He flipped it open, revealing neatly stacked bundles of $100 bills. $500,000, the leader continued, "for a simple deal. You hand over the truck, and we pretend this little conversation never happened." Izzy looked down at the money, then back at the cartel thugs. A slow smirk spread across her lips. "Sorry, boys," she said, her hand resting near the blade tucked into her belt. "This truck ain't for sale." And just like that, the air shifted. The cartel enforcers exchanged glances. The leader's smile twitched, faltering for just a second. They had expected an easy deal, maybe even a terrified woman. Instead, they had just walked into the lion's den. The moment Izzy refused the offer, the air grew thick with tension. The cartel enforcers exchanged quick, silent glances. They weren't used to being told no, especially not by a lone trucker. The leader, the one with the scar on his cheek, exhaled slowly and let out a half chuckle, shaking his head as if she had just made a childish mistake. "Senora, I don't think you understand," he said, his voice calm but laced with an unmistakable threat. "This isn't a negotiation. This is a courtesy. We don't usually give people a choice." Izzy crossed her arms, her boots planted firmly in the gravel. She had spent years in war zones, dodging IEDs and engaging in firefights in the dead of night. This question mark, this was nothing. "Listen, Scarface," she said, taking a slow step toward him. "You can flash that cash all you want, but I don't take orders from cartel thugs." The insult landed like a hammer. The other men stiffened, their grips tightening on their weapons. One of them, a younger guy with a shaved head, muttered a curse in Spanish. It was clear what was coming next. Scarface let out a slow sigh, then made a subtle motion with his fingers. In an instant, two of his men stepped forward, their hands reaching for their weapons. Izzy's body tensed. Her mind calculated the odds. 6 against 1. Armed men, prepared for a fight. Bad odds, but not impossible. She let out a slow breath, her right hand inching toward her belt, where her Bowie knife was tucked under her leather jacket. Scarface took a step forward, rolling his shoulders like a man about to make a decision he wasn't going to regret. "Last chance, Senora," he said. "Either you take the money and disappear, or we take the truck and—" Before he could finish, Izzy moved. Like a striking viper, her hand shot out, grabbing the wrist of the closest enforcer just as he pulled his pistol. A sharp twist and a sickening snap. His wrist shattered, and the gun clattered to the ground. In the same breath, Izzy spun, driving her knee into his ribs, sending him sprawling backward. For a second, the rest of the cartel members hesitated. They had expected a frightened trucker, not a trained fighter. That hesitation cost them. Izzy lunged, yanking her knife free and slicing across the arm of the second thug before he could pull the trigger. He howled in pain, clutching the wound. Gunfire erupted. The leader pulled his pistol, but Izzy was already moving. She dove behind the open cab door of her truck just as bullets ripped through the air, shattering glass and kicking up dust. Her heart pounded, but she was in her element now. The cartel had no idea what they had just started. Izzy pressed her back against the side of the truck, her breath steady despite the chaos unfolding around her. Bullets had already torn through her side mirror, and dust clouds filled the air as the cartel thugs scrambled to reposition. They expected her to panic. They expected her to cower. They were about to realize just how wrong they were. A sharp whistle cut through the gunfire. The cartel leader, Scarface, held up a hand, signaling his men to hold fire. Silence fell over the makeshift battlefield. He wanted control. He wanted her to submit. "You've got guts, trucker," he called out. "But let's be real. This ends with you on your knees." Izzy let out a dry chuckle. "You first." Scarface grinned, motioning for two of his men to flank her from the sides. They thought they had her pinned. Izzy reached under the driver's seat, her fingers curling around cold steel, her sawed-off shotgun. With one fluid motion, she pumped the action and stepped out from behind the door. Boom! The first thug barely had time to scream before the blast sent him flying backward, his weapon clattering to the ground. The second froze, caught between reaching for his pistol and running for cover. Too slow. Izzy pivoted, bringing the shotgun up, pressing it against his chest. His hands shot up instantly. "No, no, no!" Crack! A brutal knee to the gut sent him crumpling to the ground. The remaining men hesitated, their confidence cracking. They weren't fighting an ordinary trucker. Scarface, however, didn't waver. He had underestimated her once. He wouldn't do it again. Slowly, he pulled out a small radio from his vest and pressed the button. "Bring them in." A low rumble in the distance sent a chill up Izzy's spine. More vehicles, reinforcements. Her eyes flicked to her truck. It was still running. If she made it inside before they got here, she had a chance. But Scarface wasn't done. He lifted his pistol and aimed directly at her head. "Last chance," he growled. Izzy smirked, gripping the shotgun tighter. "No, Scarface, it's your last chance." The next few seconds would decide everything. Fight or run. Live or die. This was it. The desert air was thick with dust, gunpowder, and tension. Izzy's knuckles whitened around the grip of her shotgun as she stared Scarface down, his pistol locked onto her skull. Tick, tock. Every muscle in her body screamed at her to move, to act before the reinforcements boxed her in. But Scarface was waiting too. He thought he had her. He thought this was checkmate. He had no idea how wrong he was. A low rumble grew in the distance. Not from Scarface's reinforcements. Something else. Something bigger. Scarface hesitated for a split second, his eyes flicking past Izzy. She saw it. Doubt. Then came the roar. Engines. Dozens of them. A convoy of semi-trucks stormed over the horizon, kicking up massive clouds of sand. The sun gleamed off steel grills and tinted windshields. At the front of the pack, a massive black Peterbilt, its chrome pipes gleaming like a war machine, headed straight for them. Scarface's reinforcements had barely arrived when the truckers hit the gas. One cartel pickup swerved too late. Boom! The Peterbilt smashed into it, sending metal and bodies flying. Behind it, the convoy fanned out, cutting off the rest of Scarface's men. Scarface whipped his pistol toward the oncoming chaos. Mierda! Stop them! Stop them! But his men were already backing away. They hadn't signed up for this. They had expected one trucker, not an army. Izzy saw her moment. With a sharp twist, she ripped Scarface's pistol from his grip, driving her elbow into his face. He staggered back, blood spraying from his nose. "You should have taken the deal," she spat. One of the cartel thugs tried to raise his rifle, too late. Bang! A trucker in a faded Stetson dropped him with a clean shot from a lever-action rifle. Chaos exploded around them. Gunfire, screeching tires, thugs scattering like rats. Izzy sprinted for her rig, pumping the shotgun as she leaped onto the side step. The moment she landed in the driver's seat, she slammed the door shut and floored the gas. The 18-wheeler roared to life, its massive tires tearing into the dirt. Behind her, the remaining cartel pickups desperately tried to retreat. One thug, panicked, scrambled toward a black SUV. Izzy grinned. "Not today, cabron." She jerked the wheel hard to the right. Crash! The semi's steel bumper caught the SUV broadside, flipping it like a tin can. The cartel's last hope crumpled into a heap of twisted metal. Scarface, bloodied and disoriented, stumbled to his feet. He reached for a second pistol at his waist, but then he heard it. The clicking of dozens of guns locking onto him. Trucker boots crunched on gravel as his worst nightmare became reality. He was completely surrounded. Izzy cut the engine, stepping down from her rig. She adjusted her leather jacket, leveled her shotgun at Scarface's chest, and smirked. "Now," she said, cocking the gun, "let's talk about your last chance." Scarface stood frozen, hands half raised, eyes darting between the circle of truckers closing in on him. His men were either dead, unconscious, or speeding away into the desert, leaving him alone to face the consequences of his arrogance. Izzy took slow, deliberate steps forward, the barrel of her shotgun never wavering. The convoy of truckers had come to a halt behind her, their rigs lined up like an impenetrable wall of steel and horsepower. Dust settled around them, the only sound the idle hum of idling diesel engines and the creak of leather from shifting gun belts. Scarface licked his lips, desperation creeping into his voice. Look, we got off on the wrong foot. No need for more blood, right? Maybe we make a deal. Shut up." Izzy's voice was calm, controlled, deadly. Scarface's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to being ordered around, especially not by a woman. But he was out of options. Izzy tilted her head toward the tray of money that had fallen onto the dirt, bills scattered like fallen leaves. This is what you think truckers are about? You thought a stack of cash would make me forget who I am? Forget what I stand for?" She took another step closer. Scarface took a nervous step back. "You don't get it, do you?" she continued. "We're not for sale. We're the last of a dying breed. Men and women who built this country from behind the wheel, who keep it moving. You think you can throw money at us and we'll roll over?" She scoffed. You don't belong on these roads, and now you're going to pay for thinking you did." One of the older truckers, a grizzled man with a thick white beard, stepped up beside her, resting his shotgun over his shoulder. "We could hand him over to the cops," he muttered, though his tone made it clear he wasn't convinced it was the best option. Izzy shook her head. "Cops won't do a damn thing. Not when the cartel has half the department in their pocket." Scarface saw his opportunity. "Exactly. So why don't you just—" Crack! The bearded trucker's fist slammed into his jaw, sending him sprawling into the dirt. A few other truckers chuckled, shaking their heads. Scarface groaned, blood dripping from his split lip. He turned his head, spitting out dust and a tooth. Izzy squatted down next to him, grabbing a fistful of his shirt. "Here's how this works. You're gonna tell your cartel buddies that these roads, they're off limits. Truckers aren't your mules. You come after us again, you won't be walking away next time." Scarface coughed, his breath shaky. "And if I don't?" Izzy gave him a wicked grin. "Then we bury you out here, and no one will ever find your sorry ass." A silence settled over the group. Scarface looked at the ring of truckers, each one armed, each one ready. They weren't bluffing. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. Okay, I'll pass the message along." Izzy released his shirt, standing up. Smart choice. One of the truckers tossed Scarface the keys to one of the cartel's abandoned pickups. "Now get the hell out of here, and don't let us see you again." Scarface scrambled to his feet, not daring to look back as he limped to the truck, started the engine, and sped off into the horizon. The moment he was gone, Izzy let out a slow breath. The truckers around her relaxed, lowering their weapons. "Well," the bearded trucker said, adjusting his cap, "that was one hell of a show." Izzy chuckled, looking around at her people, truckers who had each other's backs, no matter what. "Yeah, but it's just another day on the road." With that, she turned back to her rig, climbed into the driver's seat, and fired up the engine. The convoy rumbled to life behind her, ready to move on. As the sun set over the desert, the message had been sent loud and clear. Truckers don't run, truckers don't sell out, and if you pick the wrong one, you won't live to regret it.